Week 10 of the fantasy football season. Here's a few quarterbacks I looked at on the wire this week. The first guy, Taylor Heineke of the Washington Commanders. So he's been on the list the last few weeks here, is Taylor Heineke. And he's been pretty serviceable, especially the way quarterback play's been this season in fantasy football. So in the 3 starts here for this season for Heineke, Week 7 versus Green Bay, 201 pass yards, 2 touchdowns and info on that one. Week 8 at Indianapolis, 279 pass yards, a touchdown, 29 rush yards, and a rushing touchdown. And then Week 9 versus Minnesota, not a great game, but he still put 2 touchdowns on the board with 150 passing yards and 17 rushing. So right now, tough matchup on paper on Monday Night Football this week here at the Philadelphia Eagles. I give up the least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks on the season, but I think in this one they're going to be chasing points, no doubt about it. Is his Commander team, and it's a divisional ball game where anything can happen. So right now, with his rushing prowess and at least putting 2 touchdowns up on the board here for Taylor Heineke, he's a quarterback available right now in 89% of fantasy leagues, and I give him an ad this week. Next guy, Jimmy Garoppolo of the San Francisco 49ers. So Jimmy G here, he's been playing good football over the last few weeks, especially since the Christian McCaffrey trade. So obviously San Francisco was on a bye in Week 9, but now back into play here in Week 10 versus the Chargers. So the last few games here for Jimmy G, Week 6 at Atlanta, 296 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 windows, 11 rush yards. Week 7 versus Kansas City, 303 pass yards, 2 touchdowns and info on a fumble loss. And Week 8 at the Rams, 235 pass yards, 2 touchdowns in that one. So he's got a good matchup on paper coming up versus the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 10. Then Arizona, Week 11, so some decent ball games for Jimmy G. He's got an arsenal of weapons over there in San Francisco. Looks like Deebo Samuel should be back in this one on Sunday Night Football versus the Chargers in Week 10. And with all those good weapons and Samuel, Ayuk, and McCaffrey added to the mix here, this is a guy that easily could score 20, 23 fantasy points weekly, and he's still available right now in 61% of fantasy leagues. Next quarterback is Marcus Mariota of the Atlanta Falcons. So Marcus Mariota, it's been an up and down season here for him, no doubt about it. But it's been some good games and some bad games, and that's what it's been all about at the quarterback position. But the last few weeks he was putting up some decent numbers. Week 6 versus San Francisco, 129 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 50 rush yards, a touchdown. Week 7 at Cincinnati, 124 pass yards, a TD, 31 yards rushing. Week 8 versus Carolina, 253 pass yards in that one, 3 touchdowns, 2 windows, 43 rushing, and then a dud performance versus the Chargers, 129 pass yards, 24 rushing. So the only reason I'm recommending him this week, available in 67% of fantasy leagues. Another good matchup at Carolina in Week 10, where in Week 8 he went off for 253 and 3 touchdowns in that one with 43 rushing. So we know Mariota can run the football decently at the quarterback position, and with a good matchup here in Week 10, he's a streaming option. Like I said, the next quarterback, Daniel Jones of the New York Giants. So Daniel Jones, it's been a pretty up and down season here for him, even though the Giants, we know, are 6-2 on the season. So now coming off the bye week, a good matchup for Jones and the Giants versus the Houston Texans that obviously have been struggling this season here. So Jones, the last few games here for him, a mixed bag of results. Week 6 versus Baltimore, 173 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, a fumble loss for 17 fantasy points. Week 7 at Jacksonville, a monster game, 202 pass yards, a touchdown, 107 on the ground, and a rushing touchdown. And then Week 8 at Seattle, he didn't do anything in that one, 176 pass yards and 20 rush yards. So right now with a bye week in Week 9, he had the week off here. In Week 10, a good matchup versus Houston. And then Week 11, he's usable as well versus Detroit. So right now, Daniel Jones available in 60% of fantasy leagues, and a quarterback I would give an ad this week to. And the 5th and final quarterback I would add this week off waivers, Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. So Goff, he's had a couple monster games this season, and then a couple mediocre games like he did in Sunday's game, Week 9 versus Green Bay. So the last few games here for him, Week 7 at Dallas was a dud performance, 228 pass yards, 2 windows, 2 fumble losses. Week 8 versus Miami, in that one, a nice bounce back, 321 passing, a touchdown, and even caught a ball for 5 yards. And then Week 9 versus Green Bay, a mediocre ball game, 137 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, and an info. So Week 10 here, a matchup where this game could be a mini shootout between 2 division rivals in the Bears and Detroit. The only thing is, we know Goff's good at home this season, but on the road, it's been a different story looking at the splits. But this week here at Chicago, I think he can make a few things happen. I know Amon St. Brown hasn't been all that great over the last couple weeks here. But Jared Goff right now, I think, have a decent ball game as a streaming option with 4 teams on bye, and he's available in 51% of fantasy leagues. That's a few quarterbacks I look to add on the wire here for Week 10 of the fantasy football season.